You've seen thousands of birds in your life, in your yard, at the park, on the sidewalk, in the trees. And yet you've probably never seen a dead one just lying in the grass, not on a branch, not anywhere out in the open. Where are they? Birds die every single day, millions of them. Disease, predation, old age, starvation, accidents. The mortality rate of wild birds is extraordinarily high, and yet the evidence of all that dying is almost completely invisible to us. Studies estimate that roughly 50% of songbirds die in their first year of life. For every cardinal at your feeder this morning, statistically half of its siblings from last year's brood are already dead. So where are the bodies? This is not a small question. This is one of the most commonly asked questions in ornithology, and the answer is far more specific and far stranger than most people realize. Today we're going into exactly why you almost never see dead birds, what actually happens in the final hours and minutes of a bird's life, and where the bodies go. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover involves a behavior that researchers have only recently documented, and it suggests that some bird species may have something that looks remarkably close to what we would call an awareness of death. Let's start with the numbers, because the scale of this mystery is bigger than most people grasp. North America is home to roughly 7.5 billion land birds at any given time. According to a 2019 study published in the journal Science, the annual mortality rate for adult songbirds averages between 40 and 60%, depending on the species. That means that in any given year, somewhere between 3 and 4.5 billion birds die in North America alone. 3 to 4.5 billion. If even a fraction of those bodies remain visible for more than a few hours, you would see dead birds constantly. You would see them in your yard, on your street, in every park, on every trail, and yet you don't. The statistical probability that you should have encountered far more dead birds than you actually have is overwhelming. So what's happening to them? The answer has several parts, and the first one is the most straightforward. Birds don't die where you're looking. When a bird is sick, injured, or entering the final stages of life due to age or disease, its behavior changes in very specific ways. Research on avian behavior during terminal illness, documented in studies on everything from West Nile virus to avian influenza, shows that sick birds become lethargic, disoriented, and most importantly, they seek cover. A healthy bird operates in open or semi-open spaces where it can see predators coming and escape quickly. A bird that is compromised, that cannot fly well or react quickly, retreats to the densest cover it can find. Thick underbrush, the interior of a shrub, dense ground vegetation, tall grass, the base of a hedge. Places where a predator is less likely to spot it, and places where, if it dies, the body will be concealed from view. This behavior is not conscious strategy in the way humans plan. It is instinctive threat response. A bird that cannot escape a predator effectively hides instead. And the place it hides to avoid predators in its final hours is the same place that conceals its body after death. This is why you rarely see dead birds in the open. They are not dying in the open. They are dying in the places you don't look, the places you can't see into, the undergrowth and dense vegetation that you walk past every single day without a second glance. If you were to push aside the branches at the base of every overgrown shrub in your neighborhood, you would find more dead birds than you expect. But you don't do that. Nobody does. And so the bodies remain hidden, not because they've been removed, but because they were never visible to begin with. But concealment alone doesn't explain the full absence, because even in the cases where birds do die in the open, on lawns or driveways or sidewalks, the bodies disappear quickly. Research on scavenger efficiency, particularly studies done on urban and suburban bird mortality, shows that the average time a small bird carcass remains visible in an area with active scavenger populations is between 30 minutes and 4 hours. 30 minutes to 4 hours. If the bird dies overnight, which many sick birds do because nighttime is when a compromised metabolism can no longer sustain body temperature, the body is often gone by the time you wake up. The scavengers that remove bird carcasses are not what most people picture. You're not looking for vultures circling overhead or coyotes dragging a cardinal across the lawn. You're looking at much smaller, far more common scavengers that are everywhere and working constantly. Ants, beetles, flies, and other insects begin working on a bird carcass within minutes of death in warm weather. A single carcass can be stripped of soft tissue by insect activity within hours under the right conditions. But the faster, more complete removal happens because of vertebrate scavengers that most people don't think of as scavengers at all. Domestic cats are one of the most efficient removers of bird carcasses in suburban and urban areas. A study published in the journal Nature Communications estimated that free-ranging domestic cats in the United States kill between 1.3 and 4 billion birds annually. But cats don't just kill live birds, they scavenge too. A dead or dying bird on the ground is an easy meal, and cats patrol their territories regularly, often at night when you're not watching. A cat encountering a dead bird on a lawn at 3 in the morning will remove it. You wake up, the bird is gone, and you never knew it was there. Raccoons, opossums, skunks, and foxes, all of which are common in suburban areas and increasingly common in cities, are opportunistic scavengers. They don't need the bird to be fresh. They will take a carcass in any stage of decay. Crows and ravens, which are highly intelligent and constantly scanning their territories for food, will take dead birds. Blue jays, which are omnivorous and opportunistic, will scavenge. Even squirrels, which most people think of as nut eaters, will scavenge bird carcasses for protein, especially in winter when other food sources are scarce. The efficiency of scavenger networks in removing small carcasses is so high that researchers studying bird mortality often have to check field locations multiple times per day just to document deaths before the evidence disappears entirely. But there's a third part of this that's less intuitive and more unsettling. Some birds don't leave bodies at all because they are consumed before any visible remains can form. Predation is one of the leading causes of death in wild birds, and predation by definition does not leave a carcass in a place where you would happen to see it. A sharp-shinned hawk takes a chickadee mid-flight. There's no body on the ground. The hawk carries it to a perch, consumes it, and drops the indigestible parts, the bones and feathers, in a location far from where you walk. A Cooper's hawk takes a mourning dove at your feeder. You see an explosion of feathers. By the time you step outside to look, the hawk is gone, and so is the dove. What's left is a scatter of feathers on the lawn, and within an hour, those feathers blow away or get picked up by other birds for nesting material. The evidence of death disappears almost as fast as the death itself happened. Owls are even more efficient. A great horned owl or a screech owl hunting at night takes a sleeping bird from a roosting site. The kill happens in complete darkness. The owl consumes the bird whole or in large pieces and regurgitates a pellet containing the indigestible parts hours later, often far from the kill site. You never see the bird. You never see the predation event. The only evidence that it happened at all is a small pellet on the ground under a distant tree. And, unless you know exactly what you're looking at, you walk past it without noticing. Mammalian predators do the same. Cats, foxes, and weasels take the bird and consume it elsewhere. The site of death is cleaned by the predator's own behavior. Nothing remains. So when you combine all of these factors together, the concealment behavior of dying birds, the rapid scavenging of any exposed carcass, and the predation that removes birds before any body can appear in a visible location, the statistical probability that you will actually encounter a dead bird drops dramatically. You would need to be in exactly the right place, a place where a bird died in the open, at exactly the right time, within the narrow window between death and scavenger removal, and in a location you're actually looking at closely rather than walking past. That particular combination of circumstances is genuinely rare, which is why your lifelong sense that you never see dead birds is not wrong. You don't. Not because they aren't dying in enormous numbers, but because every ecological process that follows death is effectively optimized to erase the evidence quickly. Now let's talk about the part of this question that makes people genuinely uncomfortable. The part about whether birds have any awareness of their own death or the deaths of other birds around them. For a long time, the default assumption in ornithology was that birds simply do not have a concept of death. The thinking was that they lack the cognitive architecture required to understand mortality as an abstract concept, that for a bird, another bird simply stops being present, and that's the end of it. But research over the past 15 years has begun to seriously complicate that assumption, particularly when it comes to corvids, crows, ravens, jays, and magpies. In 2015, researchers at the University of Washington published a study that documented something unexpected. When crows encountered a dead crow, they didn't ignore it. They gathered. Multiple crows would arrive at the location of a dead crow, sometimes dozens of them, and engage in what the researchers described as mobbing behavior. They would call loudly, circle the body, land near it, and remain in the area for extended periods, sometimes 15 to 20 minutes or longer. The behavior was consistent across observations. It appeared across different crow populations, and critically, it was not predator-directed. The crows were not mobbing a threat. They were specifically responding to the dead crow itself. What made this finding even more striking was what the researchers documented happening afterward. They tested whether crows would return to locations where they had encountered a dead crow. They did not. Crows that had participated in a gathering around a dead crow avoided that location for weeks afterward, even though it was within their established territory. Even though food was available there, the presence of a dead crow had changed how the living crows assessed that space. They had updated their understanding of that location as a result of encountering a death there. Whether or not that constitutes anything like a concept of death in the philosophical sense, it is clearly more than nothing. Other corvid species show similar, and in some cases even more striking behaviors. Magpies have been observed bringing grass and placing it near the bodies of dead magpies, a behavior that has no obvious survival function and that, to any human observer, looks like something close to a burial ritual or an act of mourning. Western scrub jays, according to research from the University of California, Davis, will stop caching food and increase alarm calling when a dead jay is present nearby. These are behaviors that suggest heightened vigilance and active social communication about the death. The entire group responds to the information that one of their members has died. Whether these behaviors should be called funerals, grief, or rituals is something researchers are appropriately careful about. Those terms carry enormous human emotional and cultural weight that may not translate cleanly to avian cognition. But what is not in question is that these birds are doing something deliberate and socially coordinated. They are not ignoring death. They are responding to it in ways that are consistent, repeatable, and behaviorally complex in ways we didn't expect to find. For most songbirds, the evidence of any death awareness is considerably thinner. There are anecdotal reports of cardinals or robins remaining near a dead mate for hours, calling repeatedly, returning again and again, behaving in ways that look to human observers like grief or distress. But anecdotal observations are not controlled scientific evidence, and those behaviors can be explained by other factors: territorial defense, persistent pair bonding that hasn't yet updated to reflect the partner's absence, simple confusion about a stimulus that stopped responding. What is clear is that most small songbirds do not engage in the kind of group social response to dead individuals that corvids do. Whether that reflects a genuine cognitive difference, a difference in social structure, or simply a difference in how much time and energy a small bird can afford to spend on behaviors that don't directly serve immediate survival. Atos, still an open and genuinely interesting question. Here is what you should take from all of this. The absence of dead birds in your daily experience is not an accident, and it is not a mystery. It is the result of several overlapping and mutually reinforcing ecological processes. Predator avoidance behavior that drives dying birds into concealment. Scavenger efficiency so high that exposed carcasses are typically removed within hours. And predation itself that consumes birds without leaving remains in any location you would encounter. The question of where dead birds go has a specific and observable answer. They go into dense cover. They go into the stomachs of scavengers. They go into the talons and beaks of predators. They are processed by insects, by bacteria, by the same decomposition systems that handle every dead organism on Earth. They disappear not because of some strange quirk of nature, but because of ecology functioning exactly as it's supposed to. Every part of that system is efficient. Every part of it is fast. And none of it happens where you happen to be standing and looking. And yet, for some species, there may be something more happening at the moment of death than simple ecological processing. A recognition, a response, a behavior that emerges again and again across individuals and populations, and suggests that death is not simply processed as an absence, as a bird that was there and now isn't, but as a presence. The presence of something that other birds notice,